We've been talking about this for decades about not repeating this history, not, feeding into and letting the things that lead to these sorts of insurrections happen and fester. But here we are. So where do we go? How do we deal with this now? How are you thinking about that?
I'm actually still thinking about one of the words that Janet used, which was unimaginable. So it was unimaginable then, and that's also a word we've been using to describe what happened at the Capitol last week. To some of us at ADL, and probably obviously outside of ADL, what happened was extreme last week, but not totally unimaginable. There have been signs, and plenty of signs, that the lessons of the Holocaust have not been learned, that repeated genocides that have happened since the Holocaust is a reason for concern. And on top of that, the sort of constant anti-Semitic and racial tropes that have been sort of woven through Nazi Germany have reappeared in many manifestations since that time. We can just look back less than a year ago to see those tropes sort of reemerge in new and horrific ways in connection with the coronavirus, where the Asian community was blamed in ways and the Jewish community was blamed in ways for either transmitting the virus or profiting out of the virus. Um, so those tropes are there, but they're more insidious when people don't connect them. And one of the things we try to do at ADL is make those connections, whether it's by advocating for mandatory Holocaust and genocide education. A shout out to New Hampshire, which adopted this just last year, but also with our work on extremism, where we're kind of digging into the dark web to see those stories, to see how those lies are shared and spewed, both in sort of the alternate sites, but also in Facebook and the more traditional sites. In fact, I will note here that Facebook has been one of the places where the lie of Holocaust denial has been prominently shared and spewed, and more recently, Facebook has agreed to take that off. But that didn't happen automatically either. So unfortunately, the task of education, which is very high up on ADL's list of really important actions in relation to Holocaust remembrance and understanding the lessons of the genocide. There's much more that needs to be done. But, sort of our view is that we're continuing our work in extremism, both in education and analysis, but also our direct work in schools to promote both Holocaust and genocide education, but also more broadly for anti-bias and anti-hate training, for students. There's a lot of improvements I think we could all agree that could be made to our civic discourse and to giving our next generation the language both to recognize the atrocities of the Holocaust and genocide, but also have the language and ability to discuss all forms of hate and bias.